Welcome to the tutorial for entering employees into our Labor Pricing for Profit version 6.0 software model. Employees are just one of the costs that make up part of our overhead. Our hourly rate needs to be set correctly in order to pay our employees a decent wage. Just as importantly, if not more importantly, is our hourly rate needs to be set properly so you can pay yourself a reasonable wage. So let's get started. To enter employees into our model, we're going to click on the Costs Input icon on the left-hand toolbar under Setup. Once we click that, the Cost Setup window will open up. On the right-hand side of this window, we've got equipment, labor, fixed and variable overhead, and so on. To enter labor or employees into our model, we'll simply click on the radio button for labor. The window will automatically reconfigure itself to allow us to set up labor into our model itself. A couple of the items on this screen. We have several icons across the bottom. I'll just cover these real quickly as we get started here. Anytime we want to enter a new employee into our model, we can simply click on the new icon, as we'll do in just a moment. The next is modify. Once we've got employees already set up and created in there, we can actually make changes to their individual record by highlighting them in the list above and clicking on modify. If we want to remove an employee from our model, we can simply click delete. Or if we've got two employees who are very close to one another, we've added a feature in version 6.0 that allows us to actually highlight an employee that we've already entered in, click on the duplicate icon, and it will actually make a duplicate copy of that exact employee. We can just simply give them a different name and then go in and modify it. And we'll cover that later on in this tutorial. Copy cost to a new model year. We'll get into that at a later point in the tutorial process, but that will enable us to actually copy a cost or a employee from this year to a future year model. Direct labor report simply lets us, if we would like, print out a report that will show us what we keyed in, all the data that we entered in for every employee within the company. When you click on that, you can not only look at it, but you can also view it on the screen, print it on paper, whichever you would like. So let's get started. To enter our first employee, we'll click on the new icon. At that point, the labor entry window will open up, and we can start entering the information about our current employee. Our employee's name, Bill Smith. We can enter in any kind of information we want about Bill. Let's say, for example, rate includes a $1 increase. Okay, we can hit tab and go to the next field. And this window you'll see is divided now into two sections. The first one on the left-hand side is controlled by this checkbox here, which states that this employee has direct labor hours. In other words, this is a direct labor employee, a employee that works in the field whose time is being billed directly to the customer. In other words, they work an hour, we bill the customer an hour. Okay, that's a direct labor employee. The right-hand side of this screen is for all indirect labored employees. That's our support staff. That's you if you don't work in the field. We'll talk about this piece here in just a moment. So let's continue entering. Bill Smith is a service technician for our company. We pay Bill on an hourly basis. So in this first box in the direct labor input section, we can either enter an H for hourly or S for a salaried employee. Either one, the software can handle it each way. As soon as we do that, the software is going to ask us for their hourly rate. Well, we pay Bill $21 per hour. We've got the direct labor hours input. We've got an input hours icon box here. As soon as you click on that box, the direct labor hours for Bill Smith will open up immediately. And we need to verify this for every direct labor employee because, again, direct labor employees, remember that their time, they work an hour, we're going to bill the customer an hour, directly impacts our total billable hours for the company. So we want to make sure that this is as accurate as we possibly can. The various columns that are on this particular worksheet are regular hours. Now you'll notice that is automatically filled in with hours already in our system. And what the software is doing is it has taken your payroll work week that you entered in company parameters when we originally set up went through the company wizard, and it has determined which months of the year are 5-week months and which ones are 4-week months. And it's calculating the regular hours based on a 40-hour work week. Now, one of the questions that comes up fairly often here is, well, my guys typically work a lot of overtime, or they work some overtime. Should I enter that in? Our guideline here is if they do work overtime, you can enter that in the overtime column. But we typically recommend against that, and here's the reason why. If for your company you create your model that shows that you are working a fair amount of overtime, then the cash flow projections and the labor rate that it's going to project will be absolutely dependent on your company always working that overtime. If you don't work that overtime next year, then your pricing is going to be incorrect. Whereas if we just base it on regular hours with no overtime hours, the hourly rate that you project at that point in time will cover 100% of your overhead in a 40-hour work week. Now, even if you don't get that overtime next year, you're still okay. So the software is automatically calculating 40 hours per work week in the regular time column. And then our total hours at the bottom, it is tallying it up at 2,080 hours. Again, overtime is left blank, and we're going to leave it blank in our particular case. The total hours column is just simply adding up the regular hours plus the overtime hours to come up with a grand total. And that's a calculated field. You don't have to enter anything in there. Moving further to the right, we've got our lost hours. Lost hours are those hours that we have to pay our direct labor people, our field labor guys, that we have to pay them for that we can't bill somebody for. And this gets to be very, very expensive time. The typical lost time for a service technician will be somewhere around 50% of their time, and the typical lost time for an installation crew will be somewhere between 20 and 30% of their time. If you're not sure what the lost time is for your guys, I encourage you to go back and actually track it for 2 weeks and see just how high it is. But those percentages are going to be fairly close. So in Bill's case, we can go through and actually enter in his lost hours, and this is again lost hours for the entire month. So I can say out of his 2 hours, he is a service technician, so 50% of his time, I've tracked it, is lost time where I can't bill somebody for. Okay, and so I can enter in the 100 hours and scroll through my list and enter in, this one's going to be 80 hours and 80 hours, and I can enter them in all the way down the list like this. Or if you just know the total for the year, the other thing that you can do is simply come in here and enter a grand total. He's 50% non-billable, so 1,040 hours of his time is non-billable. When you hit enter, the software will automatically spread that value that you entered here in the total evenly throughout your entire year. Makes entry very, very quick. Sick hours. If you allow sick hours for your employees, you can enter them in the sick column. Again, just take your best guess. Really, if you allow 5 sick days, they're going to take them at some point throughout the year, but we don't know when. So if I enter in here that we allow 40 hours, again, I'm just going to let the software divide that evenly throughout the year based on whether it's 4 weeks or 5 weeks within a given month. Holidays, we can enter in our holidays throughout the year. And in my case, my example, we just pay the major holidays. So that's going to be 8 hours for January. It will be 8 hours for Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So we've got our 48 hours entered in. So the software is automatically, as we're entering in all of these hour columns, tallying up our total non-billable time for this employee throughout the year. So you can see that Bill has a total of 1,128 non-billable hours for the company. And then in the last column, it tallies up our total billable hours. So he has 952 billable hours throughout the year. Once we've entered all the information here, we can now click on Accept, and that will lock in our time. The software automatically, still in this direct labor input section, will automatically calculate how much of his time is billable, how much is non-billable. The next thing that we have to do is tell the software where Bill spends his time working. In our particular case, we have 2 departments within our company, and he spends most of his time in the service department, but he spends a little bit of time helping the installation crew once in a while as well. So that being the case, we are going to start out entering our service department, as that's highlighted down below. You can see we've got service department listed up above, and we're going to enter in that he spends 95% of his time in the service department. As we hit tab, it will automatically switch over to the installation department. We can see that by having it highlighted down below. And at that point, we're going to put in that he's got 5% of his time that he spends in the installation department. When we're allocating the time for our employees, we have to allocate a full 100%, not 95%, not 105%, but 100% of their time needs to be allocated to one of the departments that we've got in our company. So that basically fills out all of our time for Bill Smith as the technician in our company. And we can see in the upper right hand corner, the software has calculated a wage summary for us. It's telling us that he's got total regular hours, 2,080 hours. That's a full work week at $21 per hour. So his wages are going to total out to 43,680 hours. In our particular case, we had no overtime hours, so we've got a grand total direct labor hour for Bill Smith. We're going to go ahead and accept Bill, and then we'll run through a couple of other examples right after that. So at this point, we can click on accept, and Bill will immediately be added to our list of employees on top here. Let's go ahead and enter another employee. So I'm going to click on new again, and this employee is Jane Smith. Jane is the receptionist. So she is an indirect labored employee. That being the case, we don't have any of her time that we can bill to the customer themselves. So we're going to uncheck this box indicating that this employee has direct labor hours, and instead we're going to check the box that says this employee has indirect labor hours. We can now tell the software a little bit about Jane and how we pay her. First off, we're going to tell the software that she's an hourly employee. We pay her hourly. So H for hourly. Again, S would be salary. We'll tab down to the next box, and the hourly rate. What do we pay Jane per hour? Well, we pay Jane $12 per hour. And I'm going to tab down one more time. And how many hours per week does she work? One difference here, with the direct labor employees, we indicated that if they worked overtime, not to count it. With the indirect labor employees, we do want to count their overtime. Again, our field guys have to generate revenue to overcome our overhead. Our indirect labored employees, our office staff, is our overhead. So we want to make sure that we account for 100% of their cost. So Jane works 45 hours per week, and as we enter that in, it will be automatically calculate that overtime for us. And we do have a box here that indicates allocate amounts. If we click on that, it will simply show us how it's going to be spreading those dollars out throughout the entire year. We don't have to really change anything there, so we'll click on OK and continue on. Again, we need to tell the software, where does Jane spend her time? Well, Jane spends her time, again, really supporting all departments. So we'll start out with the service department. We've highlighted that down below. And Jane spends about 50% of her time dealing with paperwork and taking phone calls for the service department. She spends a little bit of her time, we'll say 25% of her time, supporting the installation department, and she spends a little bit of her time, the remaining 25%, supporting the retail store. Once we have all the information entered in, we can once again click on accept, and Jane will be added to our list. Now, if we've got one more employee that we want to enter in, and this other employee is very similar to one that we've already entered, we can now use the duplicate function to speed up the process of data entry. Let's say we're going to enter in another, maybe an installer. Well, the installer is going to be really very similar to Bill Smith, the technician that we entered in. Just some of the information will vary slightly. So that being the case, we can highlight Bill Smith, and now we can click on the duplicate key, at which point the software is going to ask us for that new employee's name. So we're going to enter in the new employee. John Installer is our new employee. We can click on OK, and the software will immediately add him to our list. So now at this point we can modify John to correct his information. Now to do this, we can either click on the modify key once he's been highlighted, or we can just double click right on John himself, and that labor entry window will open up. Now let's say that John spends most of his time doing installation. He is still hourly, and let's say we pay John $17.50 per hour. So we'll enter in that information. We have to look at his input hours. Where is he spending his hours throughout the week? And again, if he's an installer, so he's not going to have quite as much lost time. So maybe in this case, he's only He's got about 520 lost hours per year, so we'll adjust that as soon as we enter it in the total. It's going to automatically adjust all the columns above, or we could do each month individually. We'll accept his total hours, and now at this point he spends the majority of his time in the installation department, so we'll put 0 here and 100% of his time in the installation. Again, we've allocated 100%. The software has automatically recalculated his billable versus non-billable time as well as his wage information. And at that point we can hit accept, and it's that easy to make a change using the duplicate key. Now let's take a look at a couple of situations that would vary a little bit. First off, let's enter in the owner of the company. So we're going to enter in a new employee, and we're going to enter him in. We don't have any comments in this particular case. And as the owner is salary. It's not an hourly pay rate. And the owner is paid $75,000 per year. Now, even though the owner is paid salary, because of the fact that he's a direct labored employee, we still need to take a look at his hours and make sure that this is accurate, because we got his time is being billed to the customer in this particular example. Okay? So this is an owner that works in the field billing the customer. He's active in the actual work. So as the owner, again, we'll say 50% of his time is non-billable. Sick hours, we still need to enter it in, because even though he's salary, remember that the hours for a direct labor employee is what dictates your total billable hours to the customer. So if he's going to take sick time or he's got it coming to him, we want to put that in as well. As far as vacation hours, again, if you know when an employee is going to take their vacation, try and put it in as accurately as you can. That will help. It'll help your cash flow projections be as accurate as you possibly can. So, Mr. Owner here, well, he's typically going to take a week in January, and let's say he's going to take a week in August. So he's going to take 2 weeks of vacation, and then he gets also the same holiday pay that everybody else did. So it's going to be 8 hours in January. We've got 8 in May, 8 in July, September, November, and December. So once we've verified his hours, we can now accept him. And again, we still have to tell the software, what departments he's allocated to. And so he spends, really 50% of his time in service and 50% in installation. So once we've done that, we now have Mr. Owner entered in. Again, 100% of his time is allocated to those departments, and we've said 58% by the time that he has got holiday and sick time is non-billable. So we can accept Mr. Owner. Now, one last scenario that I want to run through here with entering employees is sometimes we'll have employees that will work both in direct labor departments. Let's say he works as an installer, but also works in the office part-time as well. And so it kind of splits his time between the two. So let's enter one more new employee. And we'll say this is, Jim. And Jim spends 50% of his time in the retail store. Okay, so once we have that set, we can now say, okay, and we'll say Jim is a salaried employee and he's earning $50,000 per year. Again, he is a direct labor employee, so we do have to look at his input hours. But now, since Jim spends 50% of his time in the retail store, that means he's only got 50% of his time available to be out in the field. So that being the case, we do need to change his regular hours here. So we're going to drop this down to 180 all the way down. Okay, he's got no overtime hours. Lost hours is still going to be, while he's working in the field, how much of his time is lost? Well, again, he's doing some installation work, so about 20% of that or so is going to be lost. So at that point in time, he's doing installation work, so about 20% of his time is going to be lost in this particular case, and we've tracked that so we know it's accurate. So we're going to say roughly, again, 20 hours is lost here, and 15, and we'll just work down the list here to make that indeed the case. And again, I'm just being not exact in my entry here, but you'll want to be as precise as you can. Okay, we've got that entered. Sick hours, again, we're saying that we give all of our employees 40 hours. Vacation hours, we'll enter those. And actually, I'm not sure when he's going to take his. He's got 40 hours of vacation coming, so we'll just spread it throughout the year. And again, I'll enter in the holiday hours that he has coming to him. Okay, now that we're done there, we've tallied out his total hours for while he spends time in the field. We'll go ahead and accept that. Now that we entered his hours, we still have to tell the software where he spends his time while he's in the field. And we had said that he spends all of his time in the installation department when he's out in the field. So that will be 100% of his time. Jim also, as we said, spends 50% of his time working in the office in the retail store. So we're going to check that side of the equation as well. And Jim is, again, salary, and he earns another $25,000 while he's working in the retail store. So again, the wages that you're putting in, the salary over here is just the salary he's earning while he's in the field. If it's hourly, then it's going to calculate it properly based on his wages. But in our case, it was salary. He earns $50,000 while he's working in the field and another $25,000 for the time he spends inside. And in this particular case, we said he spends all of his time supporting the retail store. So we've now entered an employee here who spends part of his time in the field, part of his time working inside, where the time he spends inside is not billable to anybody. We can't charge somebody for that time, but we've allocated both portions of it properly. At this point, we can go ahead and accept, and it will tell you immediately on the list of employees here that Jim is both direct and indirect. He's got multiple rates of pay, and it's tallying up his total wages here in the annual column. We'll continue this process until we have all employees, every employee, both field labor as well as office staff, will be entered in this same fashion. This concludes this tutorial. In the next section, we'll start entering our overhead costs. Thank you.